UKNOF meetings don't just happen by magic. This is the one time of the year when we take a little bit of time to let you know what's going on behind the curtain, because it's important that we're transparent and open about how we run things. Just to give you a lot of this slide deck is a subset of material that we presented at our annual meeting tomorrow. I'll say a little bit more about that as well. Thanks. So, what is the point of UKNOF? It's about sharing knowledge, best practices, improving the general level of skill and awareness within the infrastructure industry. I like to summarize it as distribution of clue. Where are we at? Well, we've been doing this for about 12 years now, 38 meetings. We've peaked over 300 people at some meetings, but in general we're kind of around this level, about 200. Mailing list is steady with about 1,400 people on it. We have a program committee, we have an advisory committee, we have a board. We have a huge tribe of committed volunteers who make things happen. And we're in good financial shape as well. We have a very secure base. So most of what we do is the meetings, 3 times a year, stuff that hopefully you find interesting and stimulating. Unlike a lot of the other UK internet bodies out there, we have a freer remit. We're not so mission-centric in terms of we're here to achieve a particular function, which means that we can be a little bit more wide-ranging in terms of our content. We're also open to everybody. You don't have to be a member. Anyone can come. We like to think that makes it open to bringing in new blood. And we're also very lucky, like Tim's talk this morning, bringing in international world-class speakers to an audience that maybe doesn't always get out to the international meetings within the UK. I used to say that we had a mailing list on which we just posted information. I'm pleased to say that actually it's a very active list these days with lots of discussions, requests for help and information. And then we're on all the usual various social media presence. Meetings 3 times a year. We've pretty much over the past few years nailed it down. So the January meeting is in London, the April meeting is in Manchester. In general, the Manchester meetings have been slightly bigger than the London meetings now. The September meetings, we're free to go somewhere else in the UK. As I say, it's the second time we're in Sheffield. We were in Glasgow last year. In general, the plan that these ran over more than one day. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of trouble nailing down the venue this time, which is why this is a one-day meeting rather than spread over 2. And there's an algorithm for when they are, but they aren't always exactly that date because it gets can be challenging finding the right venues. But we're always open to new venues. If you think you have somewhere that would be good to host a UKNOF meeting, we'd love to hear from you. And obviously, we are always looking for new sponsors as well. So here's the registrations from the last couple of dozen meetings. You can see that it's approximately growing, roughly steady state over the past year or 2, and the head count is fairly strongly dependent on where we are in the country. Funding model, we're on a non-profit basis. We don't want to charge registration fees. We know that it can be quite challenging for people working in UK companies to just even get a day out away from your tech day job. So we've managed to avoid charging registration fees, except for late registration, because if people register and then don't show up or show up late, then there are real costs for us of doing that. And basically, it's the sponsors, it's the vendors who pay for that. We're very grateful to our sponsors. The nice thing is that, again, over the past year or 2, we've had quite a lot of sponsors who keep coming back. We have a good regular relationship with them. So as I say, please make it worth their while from being here. If you haven't sponsored a meeting before, or you'd like to sponsor a meeting in future, please speak to Dinesh, and he'll be happy to discuss terms with you. We also have some patrons who actually donate to the organisation on a one-off or ongoing basis. And we've been building up a cash buffer quite well over the past year or so. The target is that we have enough money to run 2 meetings without any sponsorship, and we're getting close to that. Having said that, it costs money. Bringing the sponsorship money in requires someone's dedicated time. So some of the sponsorship money goes towards paying for that time. We do, well, there's a lot of volunteer effort. There is a small number of individuals, including myself, who have some of the time paid for by UKNOF. In general, if people are making a significant time commitment, then we will reimburse that time. How does it cost? It's costing us at least £150 per day per attendee. So typically 15 to 30,000 per meeting, depending on the time level. These are things like the venues, your lunch, hiring the AV equipment. It's highly variable depending on the city. And then there's all kinds of little bits and pieces as well, like blue tack that actually works. It's the director's time that we're reimbursing. We have a standard rate of £30 an hour for that. We don't always reimburse all of it, depends how it goes. But in general, those who are doing that submit a quotation at the start of the year, and we stick to that. We're transparent about our finances. The full details of the accounts at the annual meeting tomorrow, including per meeting P&L. They're always available on request. This gives you a summary of the state of the company accounts. You can see in 2013 we upped our game significantly in order to be able to fund the meetings. There are some trends in there. We're actually getting the costs pretty much scale with the size of the meetings, but we have managed to get some efficiencies, both in terms of meeting costs and also the hours worked. And you can see that we're gradually building the reserves towards that 2 meeting target. Systems, it used to be a cobbled together cloud of various things being donated to various parties. Last year, thanks to Nat Morris's efforts, we set up a contract with Mythic Beasts for pretty much everything. That's working very well, and we're getting good support from them. And then there are regular partners, Portfast, to provide the upstream connectivity, and Bogons for the webcasting. There's certainly been some comments about some of the website content. Yeah, it's clunky, it's old. We could do with some volunteer help to freshen that up, I think. Governance, we try and do this in a pragmatic and lightweight fashion. We don't want to create too much structure. We're not running mission-critical national infrastructure here. What we've done is to set up this advisory committee. The advisory committee is kind of like our conscience. And there are a bunch of non-profit internet organizations which provided us in the past with some quite significant material assistance that are basically appoint our advisory committee members. And they're there. If you've got any questions or concerns about how the board is running things, then these are the people to speak to. You may be aware of the UKNOF Limited legal entity. It was set up some time ago. It had a wider mission initially, but basically what it's been doing is providing the secretariat for UKNOF for the past decade or so. That's where the board comes from. Most of us are here. Steve sends his apologies. I think Willie will be here later. So these are the people you want to talk to if you want to speak to a board member. These are the advisory committee members. I'm pleased to welcome Serge here, who's taken over from Joachim for the RIPE NCC's representative. Again, I'm pretty sure that these individuals are well known throughout the community through their organizations, and they provide the oversight to the board. Program committee, 14 volunteers. Chris chairs that with Kathy and Fergus as co-chairs. It's their job to generate the content. The program committee is as self-governing as possible, and it has maximum editorial authority. We like to keep that separate from the operations of things. We're always looking for new material. The call for presentations for 39 in London in January has already gone out. Please submit stuff. These are all the PC members. Everyone except Neil and Steve is here. So again, if you're interested in submitting, these are the people to talk to. We have a fairly well-defined process for submitting stuff. When submissions come in, the PCE score them and then discuss them. After a meeting, we take the survey data that you generate in terms of how you enjoy the presentations and compare that to the program committee scores to make sure we're in. So please fill in the surveys, it's really helpful. It's actually been a little bit more difficult than it has been for a few years to generate submissions this year. We're not completely sure why that is. Maybe there's more competing events out there. Some of the team members have had other stuff going on. So we'd really like you to submit. If you get interesting stuff, don't be scared. If you're unsure about whether what you have is appropriate or not, then talk to a program committee member. We'll help shepherd you through it. Also, we're very careful about the distinction between sponsor talks and submitted talks. In general, to avoid confusion, we don't like sponsors to also submit. There are talks that are approved by the PC on the quality of the content. There are talks that are approved for the sponsors because they're paying for it. We have a maximum of 3 presentations or 40 minutes of sponsor talks per meeting. I think one of the things that we've refined over the past year or two, contradict me if you like, is that I've got a good process for giving feedback to the sponsors on what they intend to present before they present it, so that you get stuff that has got some technical interest in it and it's not just a sales pitch. Few UKNOF crew changes. We're sad to lose Nat from the board about a year ago. Charlie Bosso and David Farrell have stepped down from the PC. I'd like to welcome Nick and Marek as the new PC members. Also mentioned Serge. We're in the process of recruiting a couple of more PC members, so we're definitely interested in some extra person power there. And I already mentioned that there's at least one type of volunteer that we need. Also, volunteer PGP signing session people are helpful. We have a mailing list for volunteers. It's a good way to, if you're thinking about getting involved, that's a good way to start. And there are too many people. There's a huge team that helps out, and without the volunteer help, without the speakers, we would not have UKNOF meetings. So I'd like to thank you all for that. There's been a little bit of discussion about UKNOF governance evolution. Is the pragmatic approach that we have sufficient? We've relied on the other organisations within the UK industry to provide oversight. But we actually have our own community now, I think, which is well defined and has its own voice. Is the AC model the right model? Have we defined its role well enough? Is the current model the best way for the future? Could we improve accountability to those who contribute and participate without going over the top with a heavyweight governance approach that you maybe see at some of the other bigger organisations? The annual meeting, traditionally it's been AC and board, but I think that we'd like to kind of open that up a bit with the programme committee members, or if you think you have something to say or contribute as to how UKNOF is run, then that's open tomorrow. This is how to get in touch with us, plus all the usual social media channels. And that's it, basically. I think it's pretty much lunchtime, but I'm happy to take any quick questions. Any more substantive discussion, I think, is probably best parked until tomorrow's annual meeting. Any questions? Okay, thank you.